Hey, Foot Clan, before we get started, we just want to thank you guys for supporting the show. And if you want to support the show, you can join our community over at jointhefoot.com, where there is so much stuff. That's where we spend our time with our community. You can get premium rankings. Our flex rankings are actually through the Join the Foot community over there, and you get stuff like an extra show every single week, like today. Oh, today, go get your questions answered over at jointhefoot.com. Be a part of what we're doing here.
Welcome to the Fantasy Footballers Podcast, coming to you from the FantasyJocks.com studios with your hosts, Andy Holloway, Jason Moore, and Mike Wright.
Good morning, good afternoon, whenever you're listening, however you're listening, wherever you're listening, whatever you're doing, welcome to the show. Happy 2 a.m.
You covered it.
I covered everybody. It's Thursday for us right now, Thursday, September 28th. The Fantasy Footballers Podcast, Andy, Mike, and Jason, back again for what seems like the millionth time this week.
This week?
No, not really, but we are here every day. That's one of the things we love to do. Yesterday, I sent out a thank you to all the supporters that joined the Foot, and I asked them, I said, hey, let us know anything we can do to make the community better, things that we can improve. And someone said, hey, why don't you do some sort of live stream or something on Sunday mornings? And I was able to write back and say, Mike does
do that.
Mike does a live.
Where have you been?
Does the live stream on Sunday mornings.
It's a Sunday morning party.
It's the the last minute?
Yeah,
the last minute questions.
Pretty close.
And we also are now doing a Sunday morning update.
Ooh.
That we're posting over at Join the Foot. So man, it's crazy on Sunday morning.
Oh,
with the inactives, the players that might have limited snaps, right? You get those reports that are like, hey, Jordy Nelson's going to be out there, but he's going to play 4 snaps.
Or, I don't think most of us saw Delanie Walker. That was a surprise to me. I thought for sure he was going to end up playing. He didn't.
Yeah.
You got to have that info. Get him out.
So, very excited to get going today. We have a great show for you. My favorite episode of the week. You know this. Starts of the week. Mm-hmm. Starts of the week are on the show today. We've got the fantasy forecast breaking down the first 6 matchups for week number 4 in fantasy football. We have a great question in the FanDings Debate of the week. I think Mike and I are debating today.
Yeah, I think we're going to
go.
We're going Royal Rumble today.
Okay. Just sharing our
every man
opinions.
for himself.
And obviously we have the news and notes. I have a funny story about one of the bits of news that broke yesterday. Funny, haha for you. Funny, sad for me. Not the best thing.
I didn't know what you were talking about.
Now you know what I'm talking about, right?
Oh, yes, I do.
That was great.
And this harkens back to an argument that we had a couple weeks ago, and I bet you wish you were on our side now.
Well, maybe. So let's jump right in.
It's time for the FanDings.com Debate of the Week.
All right, last debate of the week for the month of September. It's the FanDings.com Debate of the Week. If you want to go debate a variety of sports topics, including this one, we'll tweet this one out, show you where you can go and debate it with your friends on the FanDings app. Is it wrong to make the league aware of things like injuries? And I'm going to throw in a caveat here. Also, players being named active.
Yeah.
So here's the scenario that you may face. And all of our leagues, we have Facebook groups. We think it's a great way to communicate with your league mates on a regular basis. It's a great way to get notified when trades happen, things are going on. So the question is, sometimes some listeners are Foot Clan members and they're up to date with what's going on, and others are not so much. So is it wrong, and where is the line when it comes to letting other people in the league know what in the world is going on in fantasy football? Because, look, what happens is this. Maybe you've got an opponent, another great team, and they're playing a lowly team, and that lowly team has Rob Gronkowski, for instance. And Rob Gronkowski gets named active on a Thursday night. Is it wrong to tell your league what's going on? Is it wrong to make a post that says, I don't know, Gronkowski's active? Is it wrong to say boy, this doesn't look good for you, and talk about Julio Jones' knee injury when somebody's trying to get a trade done.
Now, before you debate this, I'm going to assume that, Andy, your answer is it is not wrong. Am I correct in assuming that?
No, you're not correct in assuming that.
Okay.
I believe that there's a line, and I believe it's a bit subjective.
Okay. Because the example you gave with the Gronk situation, right, I mean, is an example you did last week. Is that correct?
Well, not exactly.
Like you said,
what I'm saying.
He skirted the line. And this is, I mean, I'm talking, you have the foot where you got the long toes, and these things are just tapping on the line, because Andy did not say, hey, Gronkowski's active. But instead, he put up a gigantic high-res image of Gronkowski and said Gronk smash for no reason. Because Gronkowski is not on Andy's team. This was not a proclamation of joy saying, I'm playing Gronk tonight. This was
This was the owner playing me, did not have him in his lineup.
Yes.
And I was just saying, man, Gronk's going to smash.
Gronk's really good.
He's going to smash tonight.
Well, you didn't say tonight. You just said Gronk smash.
Sure.
All right,
I was
so
even less directed. So you understand what's going on here. I mean, and make no mistake, this is the first time I've endeavored into that territory. I feel like Jason has been far more many, as Jason would, been across that line where he wants to go on there and, if I say something about my player, I'll get like a news story about how his ankle's hurting, or I'll say, hey, I want to trade Dez Bryant, and then
I only share the truth.
Then someone will say, you mean this Dez Bryant? And then they'll share a news story about his knee being broken or something like that. So is that just trolling? Is that friendly trolling? I feel like it is. I feel like I'm going to take the position that some generalized trolling is okay, but if you direct message another league mate and say, this is what's going on, you need to play this guy, I feel like that is the collusion line that I would not ever cross nor want to cross. Not to mention, imagine crossing that line. Let's say I emailed that other owner, I messaged him and said, you need to play Gronkowski tonight. He's in. You got to beat Jason. Gronkowski scored 0 points.
So you would have been very wrong.
I would have been very wrong, and that owner then, I put him in, but, So what do you think? I've been talking this entire time.
I'm with you that the line is very wide and very, very blurry, because I mean I don't think it matters if it's a DM directly to an owner. When you're broadcasting it to the entire league, everyone knows what you're doing. They're making an owner aware. Oh man, it's so tough because we all want to win, right? We all want to win, and we think that sometimes people misinformation. If this person only had that information, maybe they're too busy with their life and they haven't gotten this. If only they had this information, clearly they would make the right decision.
They're not going to play an injured Antonio Gates if they knew that he was out.
Right.
I think
it feels like an injustice.
I think that there is a difference when it comes to being private to being public. When it's public, you are sharing public information, or you are sharing your opinion. It's for anyone and everyone, and it's fine. If you're sharing that Dez Bryant was just injured, what's wrong with that? He's injured. You know what I mean? What would be wrong is if you're sharing that he's injured when he's not, or just lying. But as soon as you make it private, as soon as you go and tell someone, hey, you need to start this guy, you are trying to run someone else's team, or you are trying to give even if you want somebody to do that, I feel like you make it public, and
so
you say
awareness versus advice.
Yeah, but I mean,
is there a line? Is that the line?
But you're also crossing this line of competitive advantage, where if people are plugged in, let's
say
one
owner knows more because they do more research. They deserve the advantage.
And on top of that, maybe they're plugged into the news. Like you have those things. The instance I'm thinking of was many years ago. The starter for Indianapolis went down, and all of a sudden, and this was in the middle of the week. And Vic Ballard is hanging out on waiver wires and is now the starting running back, where if you post, hey, everyone should probably try and get Vic Ballard, or you posted about the injury to the running back, then everyone's going to go put the pieces together that I need to go grab Vic Ballard, as opposed to holding that information and I mean, you keep it for yourself, obviously, for the advantage, but that's so tough for me.
I don't think
I
don't think there's an easy answer.
No, this is very gray.
So if you want to debate this question and dozens more, do so over at FanDings.com. Grab the app in the App Store. We love the FanDings app. You got to check it out. If you want to follow the show on Twitter, you can do so at the FF Ballers. You can, if you do that, you'll see when Mike is periscoping on Sunday morning, and all the other news and information, all the articles like our quarterback primer that just came out, our matchup articles, our starts of the week. All of those are on the website, thefantasyfootballers.com, free for you to access. And then you can check out the community, as we said before, at jointhefoot.com. We're also on Facebook and YouTube and Instagram and iTunes and Android. And if if there is a there, we're there. If there's a destination, we're there. So let's jump into the news.
News and notes from around the league.
Well, it's time to tell my tale.
Oh, man.
In a league with you two.
In a league of record.
I was on the fence about this trade yesterday, and I was the owner of Carlos Hyde, and it was a big trade, and the pieces there were Dez Bryant, and obviously I knew the risks of trading for Dez Bryant after an injury and the fact that this MRI was supposed to happen. But it just happened to time up yesterday where I'm talking moments after the trade was accepted.
Could not have been 5 minutes.
It wasn't even. And then I got a message from Bleacher Report confirming that he has a hairline fracture in his knee that could potentially cost him multiple weeks. I have heard everything from he will play this week to he will be out longer than Romo will be out to somewhere in the middle. And then it was reported last night that he ditched the MRI.
Yeah, that was weird.
And was fined for it, which means that's why we didn't have the news early enough. So basically, I can blame Dez Bryant directly for my lack of information. I traded for Dez. I gave up Hyde, and there were other pieces, a draft pick swap in my favor because I was taking that risk. But now it looks like Dez Bryant is very questionable, and there are so many things that make Dez Bryant, we talked about it yesterday on Keep Trade Cut, that make him a risk, right? You have a Dak Prescott run offense now. Romo isn't back yet. Now you have a knee injury.
Yeah, so, I'm not a doctor, but doctors that have weighed in on this that I respect that know fantasy football think that it's going to be extremely, extremely unlikely that he plays this week, and he will probably miss several weeks. This is, very similar to the injury that Thomas Rawls has, and obviously there was no question there. He was out weeks. I think the reason that there is the question of he's going to play is because the fact that he played on it on Sunday. But they didn't know that he had it on Sunday,
right.
And that's why he played on it, because they thought it was an MCL problem. You could play through that. You're not going to cause further damage. With this injury, playing on it can cause further damage, and so at that point, you kind of need to shut down shop.
Yeah, I was going to say Gene Bramall, Dr. Gene Bramall, which is a great follow on Twitter.
Must follow.
Fantastic information for medical stuff, but talking about if now that they know there's a hairline fracture, if this is aggravated to a displaced fracture, that's a surgery. Then you could have injury to the cartilage in the area, accelerates arthritis. I mean, you're talking
I'm just waiting for the sad music to start back.
If this is what it is, if the injury is to the place that Gene Bramall thinks it is, you got to shut him down for a couple weeks. You got to let him heal.
Yeah, and that's Ian Rappaport reported the more information he gathers, it seems like he's a super long shot to play. And you've had others weigh in, like Jason said. It's not good news if you're a Dez Bryant owner. You were hoping that he was building something with Dak that you'd see accelerate, not decelerate because of an injury. Obviously, he played on it, scored a touchdown after that. But you need to make other plans with your wide receiver if you're a Dez Bryant owner and wait and see. Rashad Jennings unlikely to play on Monday night against the Vikings. This means Orleans Darkwa will get I think the majority of the work. Shane Vereen is out. You also see Paul Perkins worked in. And they have Bobby Rainey as well. Eric Decker,
Yep.
He's not going to practice on Thursday, or I'm sorry, he already didn't practice
today. He did not
today.
practice.
Shoulder injury, I think there's almost no chance he plays this week.
The team came out yesterday and said, or there was reports of, the injury is worse than first thought. Now he's missing a Thursday practice. I agree with Andy. Eric Decker is a super tough guy who will play through injuries, but I think this is going to be too much.
Now, the good news on the other side is Brandon Marshall practiced in full yesterday and looks to be back out there. They're going to have to force feed him. Now, he's playing Seattle, so that's tough, but I think he will get, if Decker's off the field, the targets will be there for Brandon Marshall. Let's talk about the Seahawks, their opponent. They signed C.J. Spiller. Does this matter for fantasy football owners?
I don't think it does. I believe it's a depth play. C.J. Prosise, they're kind of their scat back. He's been dealing with injuries on and off. It could be a bigger concern for Thomas Rawls. We were just talking about that Dez Bryant injury. If that's what Rawls has, and they think, okay, we're gonna have to shut him down for a month. I mean, you got to have depth on your team, but for fantasy purposes, like if you're a woke one owner, you're worried about Christian Michael. C.J. Spiller is not a concern for me. We've seen for years that C.J. Spiller just he doesn't have the juice anymore.
Yeah, when you're two of your backups, actually your starter and your backup. I mean, Prosise has a cast on his hand and will for a couple more weeks. So you have to bring someone like this in. I'm not picking up CJ Spiller, but I do not think this hurts Christian Michael at all.
All right, Michael Floyd cleared for football activity. He had the concussion protocol process taking place. Michael Floyd this week or John Brown? I have the answer for my rankings. It was John Brown.
Yeah, I'm going to go with John Brown as well. He was my guy at the start of the season. I think Michael Floyd gets back on the field. He's still in the protocol. He's kind of redshirted right now. But if he's back on the field, I'm still taking John Brown. What we saw last week was the amount of targets and receptions and yards per the snaps that John Brown was playing was easily the best of the Cardinals. His snap percentage has continued to increase, so I assume it's going to increase the most drastically this week. So I think John Brown is a decent play this week.
I very much like him at home. I have him and Fitzgerald rated fairly high. I think they get things right. I don't think it's going to be a super high-scoring game, but I think they'll do enough in that offense against the Rams. Kenneth Dixon returned to practice from what we're hearing from Ian Rappaport. Week 5 looks like a realistic target for his return. We've been talking about picking up and stashing Dixon for weeks, but if he's still on your waiver wire, go get him.
Yep.
Right? All right, DeSean Jackson didn't practice on Wednesday. Sat out last Wednesday too. He has an ankle and knee issue that he's dealing with.
Wednesday is Veterans Day, pretty much. If they miss Wednesday, you're not concerned.
Delanie Walker. Mike Mularkey thinks he's going to play on Sunday, as do I. Do you guys believe that he'll play?
Yes.
Yeah.
And then Lev Bell returns this week. They said they're going to use him in the slot. I think all we know is that Lev Bell will be on the field all the time. There was talk last year. Oh, we're gonna use Lev Bell and D'Angelo Williams together.
Yeah.
And then it was like 114 to 12.
Liar, pants on fire.
In terms of care. I mean, he's their whole offense.
I've had several questions of what do I do with D-Will this week because people have had him. They've been starting him. You sit D'Angelo Williams.
Yep.
He's not going to be usable.
All right, let's jump into the forecast.
Fantasy Forecast.
If you are looking for a preview to the Thursday night game, you need to click yesterday's show and listen to that one. We talked about the Thursday night show a day early this week. We're going to do that in the future just so that more people catch it because sometimes you listen to this on Friday morning. So let's start here with the London game.
AKA me setting my alarm way too early on Sunday morning.
Colts, Jaguars.
London.
Yeah. So look, they're traveling over there. Traditionally, I believe 5 of the last 7 games in London, they covered the over.
Yeah.
Overproduction, in London has been the case. Now, the only thing I know is this game is not taking place in the same stadium as all the previous games have taken place.
It's not
It's not in Wembley.
Really?
I thought that was the later one.
Yeah, I thought that was the one.
I believe this one is.
I will vet
The
that.
later London game, you're saying?
Yes.
Okay, maybe verify that, and maybe I heard that wrong. So we have Andrew Luck, we have Blake Bortles, we have Frank Gore, and the anemic Jaguars running game, and then we have a plethora of wide receiver options to discuss here. These are 2 teams that are, I believe, both 1 and 2, correct?
Yes. No. The Jacksonville Jaguars have not won a game.
How could they win?
How could they win? The Colts are favored by 2.5.
You want to love the Jags so much that you just slip in victories for them.
I try. I'm really trying.
They're like 2-1, right, guys? Right?
No, I've abandoned Gus. Forget it. So, Jason, did you verify that?
In looking it up, it looks like there's going to be some showers there, but it's not specifically saying
Like
when.
for the players after the game to wash, off?
Yeah, it is at Wembley Stadium, and the weather.
That's a terrible field.
It is no good. That is where all of the previous London games have been played. Like you said, normally they cover the over. The other thing that we've seen is that the team that is favored usually, and this is obviously this is no guarantee, but the team that is favored has very often blown out the underdog team. In this case, the Colts are favored over the Jaguars, and so I think you can confidently start all of your Indianapolis Colts and expect what should be a decently high-scoring game.
Why don't you talk for just a split second, Jason, about why we bring up the over-under totals and the lines?
Yeah, so over-under, when we talk about that, it's Vegas saying how many total points do they think are going to be scored in the game. And when you look back at the correlation between that and fantasy production, obviously the more points scored, the more fantasy relevance. But when you look backwards and say, okay, how is this used as a predictor of what's going to happen, it's actually fairly successful by comparison to other metrics. And in the case of the London games, there's just a lot of data there that is very specific that says that the favored team, and we don't have a giant sample size, but I think it's big enough to know that the favored team usually comes in and starts putting on a show.
I just saw a tweet. Jason Garrett came out and was talking about the Dez Bryant situation and said essentially Dez Bryant suspected the injury was much worse than it was, and that's why he avoided the MRI. And that's not a joke. I mean, basically didn't handle it the right way. Jason Garrett's quote was, he's a very, very passionate person, an emotional person, didn't handle it the right way.
So he was the monster in the closet. I'm going covers over the head. That's going to protect me?
That's where you show up at the MRI and you go, no, it's this knee. It's this one over here. I feel fine.
That's good.
Yeah, I mean, you hear that and you hear two things.
Not playing.
Well,
yeah, poor
no,
Dez.
I don't hear that.
Really?
I hear the opposite. When
Oh,
a very, very passionate player who wants to be on the field avoids an MRI so he can play through the pain, what that tells me is if he can play through the pain, he will.
But
If it's physically okay for him to do so, he will do that.
It's funny because what I hear in that is that what was happening to him, not knowing from an MRI, he assumed it was really, really, really bad. And that says the pain is high and he is not confident in his knee. That's how I take it.
There you go.
Well, there you go.
Two different narratives. Before we move on to the rest of this matchup, talk through what in the world to do with Ivory and Yeldon in the Jacksonville backfield. We do want to thank today's sponsors that support the show, that support this independent podcast. Let's go ahead and talk about 5-4 Club.
Let's do it.
I have been a 5-4 Club member for a very long time. This past week, my wife took out one of the plastic bags, and she said, you need to go through your closet and throw out more of your old clothes because I've been accumulating new clothes through the 5-4 Club every single month. There is no other place to get hooked up with the value that you get with the 5-4 Club. It's just $60 a month, but you get $120 worth of clothing. This past month, I opened up my 5-4 Club package. I got this sweet, like, bomber jacket.
Oh, it looked good.
I showed you guys. And I got like a V-neck gray T-shirt that's just great. And every single month something like that comes through. These guys have been on board for the past couple months.
I love it.
It's awesome. And they, this is a brand. This is a brand that produces really high-quality clothes that always seem to fit. And you go on their website, 54club.com, you can choose, like, if you want classic look, casual, forward, a mixed look. I don't know how to shop for myself, so they just do it for me at 54club.com. And so if you want to see how easy it is to hook up your closet, to upgrade your wardrobe, you need to check them out. That's 54club.com. Make sure you use the promo code BALLERS. And if you do that and you're a brand new sign up, you get 2 packages for your first order. So you get $240 of clothing
Kia.
for $60. That's promo code BALLERS for $240 worth of clothing, and that offer ends at the end of this month. So you need to head over to 5footclub.com.
It's coming up.
And a big thank you to Pristine Auction, the greatest, the best, the largest, the uber best memorabilia site on the internet. Look, I'm on there every day. This is not a joke. I'm on it in the middle of the show. I'm on it right now. I'm not hearing what these guys are saying because
That's not helpful, Mike.
I'm looking at these sweet
It's true,
deals
though.
on signed, very authentic merchandise.
You can see what Mike has if you watch the Periscope. He's got like an AJ Green jersey back behind him.
Yeah, absolutely. People are saying, "Hey, I got to see the walls." I'm like, "Whoa. No. This is my stuff." But
They
you
can't take it through the Periscope.
But you can see the AJ Green beaming off the back wall. And look, you head over to Pristine Auction. You make a free account. You let them know that the Fantasy Footballer sent you, and you get in on these auctions where things are far more affordable than you would possibly believe. And look, when you put a bid, I want to explain something for the auctions. There's these auction sites where you put a bid, you lose your cash. No, you bid on a product. If you don't win it, you pay nothing. There's nothing
should be.
There's nothing to lose, everything to gain at pristineauction.com. That's PRISTINE auction.com. And maybe you get one of these. I'm just going to throw this out. A signed Joe Flacco jersey is available.
We just gave away this signed Eddie Lacy jersey. FanDings sponsored that giveaway, and we just gave it away this morning. So
Very cool.
congrats to that winner. What in the world do you do with Ivory and Yeldon?
You bench them.
Yeah, absolutely.
They cannot run the ball.
No,
And I mean the team, I mean them individually. I don't know what the problem is, but it ain't good. It is not good.
much like that the grammar of that sentence.
Yeah. Frank Gore, though, has been very productive.
He has. I don't feel very confident in Frank Gore
This
in
week?
matchup. Yeah, I know that the Jags, their defense kind of ranks low at the moment, their running defense, but I think they're decent. And they're decent enough to slow down the old man.
I really like Frank Gore this week, so we're going to disagree. For me, when I say really like, he's my 12th ranked running back.
You really like him.
Yeah, I think he's, that high-end RB2, low-end RB1. I think he's going to get the work. I expect Indianapolis to be up in the game. Poor field conditions means that, you might be able to run. We saw a couple years ago, ironically, Chris Ivory, who's in this game, went full ham up in London, and the running game was working when the passing wasn't. I think there was some weather problems. There's weather expectations of rain coming. So I think Frank Gore is a solid play. I mean, here's what we know about Frank Gore. By the end of the season, Frank Gore will be a very valuable fantasy running back because he always is, which means through the season he has to have those games that put up points just like he did last week, and I think he can be a viable starter this week.
Let me tell you one thing I'm doing in my leagues. If you want to have an inside look into the way we approach players, I am approaching T.Y. Hilton as a top 10 wide receiver rest of season. Rest of season.
Okay.
I went out and I was trying to make trades that involved Brandon Marshall and T.Y. Hilton because of, now it changes a little bit with Decker going out, but if I could have gotten Hilton and a pick swap in my favor to give up Marshall, I really believe in Hilton with Dante Moncrief gone and the passing volume from Andrew Luck, what we saw last week against Verrett. It's just an absolute, I think, an underrated talent in T.Y. Hilton. I think we do it every year. He's not going to put up 15 touchdowns. And that's the argument I made to the owner of Hilton, saying, hey, trade him to me. He's not going to put up 15 touchdowns. But I think Hilton's great. I would play Dorsett. Obviously, Allen Robinson, I would roll him out there. And then Allen Hurns has had a slow start to the season. Jason, you are on board the Hurns Express this week because you said it's Hurns versus Hurns.
Yes, on last night's Join the Foot live stream,
Right.
I said this is the good Hurns you're going to get today. We have seen Allen Robinson has struggled against top cornerbacks, and who's the Colts? Vontae Davis should be on Allen Robinson. Allen Robinson's history against him is terrible. There's going to be a lot of points put up. I think Allen Hurns is a fine play this week. He should be productive in that wide receiver 2 range.
Yeah, and we disagreed strong disagreement about
About which side of it?
Which side of it? I think Allen Robinson has a huge week this week.
Oh, you do?
I do. I have him ranked, I think, my third highest wide receiver this week. I don't buy into I don't just apply that narrative globally without looking at the details. And to me, I don't think Vontae Davis is 100%.
Sure.
And I think players improve.
I will say, last year when Allen Robinson was matched up against Vontae Davis, and Davis did shadow him for about 3/4 of that game, Allen Robinson was 1 for 4. Now, that one was a touchdown, so he was okay. But that's a game the Jags won 51-16. They put up 51 points, and Allen Robinson had 1 catch.
I'll bet
for
Allen
4 yards.
Hurns had a real good game.
Just saying. I'm playing Allen Robinson. He's still in my top 10, but we're just throwing out the expectations have to be a little bit lower this week.
Says Mike and Jason.
Yes.
Allen or Doyle?
I'm going
tight
Doyle
end.
right now. If I've
Doyle rules.
Oh yes. Oh, that's great.
Doyle rules.
Doyle rules. Yeah. Look, if Dwayne Allen doesn't get a touchdown, which he is a great tight end for probabilities of touchdowns, he always has been. But if he doesn't get it, he's going to really drastically hurt your team. You're talking about a guy that's probably going to end up with 3 catches for 24 yards, and that's going to do nothing for you. Doyle, we have seen also used in the red zone. He has touchdowns of his own. He's outscored Allen in every single game this year, and he's getting 60 yards, up near 70 yards in a game. So I would rather have Doyle at this point.
All right, the Panthers and the Falcons game, one of the higher over-unders of the week, 50.5 points is the expectations. The Falcons are 3-point underdogs at home against the Panthers. I was slightly tempted to make this my almost upset of the week, and I was only tempted because it's not going to happen. The Panthers, I think, are going to destroy the Falcons.
Yeah, I was surprised by the over-under. Maybe the history says that they can score, that the Falcons can score on the Panthers, but I was surprised to see this as one of the highest expectations of scoring games this week.
All right. Well, look, I think that you see the only piece of the puzzle that I'm curious to see how it impacts the offense again this week is the Artis Payne in place of Jonathan Stewart piece. Kelvin Benjamin last week was not involved in the game plan. Cam Newton was furious about it. Cam Newton said if it was up to him, that would never happen again, and the offensive coordinator came out and said that's ridiculous as well. It's a big piece of why they've struggled. Why they struggled last week is not getting Kelvin Benjamin involved in the game plan. I expect a huge bounce back week. I would go buy him. I would go buy him with a comparable talent. I think Benjamin's still a top 10 guy the rest of the season. Now, Devin Funchess, if you own him, cut him. Funchess has done nothing.
Trade cut.
Keep trade cut Funchess. He's a cut and a kick to the curb. 1 catch in the first game, 2 catches in the second game, nothing last week. No, not enough involvement. Yeah, in a game where Kelvin caught 0 passes, Funchess caught 0 passes. That's what you had. So on the other side of the ball, Sanu should play. Not expecting big things. Julio's the only start that I would have there from the wide receiver side. I have Olsen as my second highest rated tight end this week. What do you guys think of Jacob Tamme?
Tammy's he's a fine play. He's involved right in the middle of the pack of the Barfy tight ends where he could give you a strong game, but he can also give you 3 for 20. The thing that's very interesting for me in this game is Matt Ryan completing over 70% of his passes right now, second in the league. Matt Ryan has been on fire. Can that fire continue against a very stout Panthers defense? He gets the benefit of being at home. That always helps out. But we've seen this Matt Ryan before where he opens the season, has some great games, but then it falls apart.
Can I answer the question for you since the listeners want to know?
Yes.
There is no chance Matt Ryan continues his hot streak against the Carolina Panthers. His first 3 games were the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, one of the worst passing defenses in the league, followed by Oakland, one of the worst passing defenses in the league, and followed that up by New Orleans, one of the worst pass defenses in the league.
And in collegiate sports.
Yeah. So, the point here is, yeah, he has been great, but his matchups have been great. I think he's going to get a rude awakening with Carolina. I do not personally have any confidence to start Matt Ryan.
I would say I have slight confidence just in the fact that the Falcons look like a completely different team. everyone, the Julio owners are not liking what's going on. You had Julio last year, the majority of games, the vast majority of games, he was getting double-digit targets. This year, I believe he has none. And
you are correct.
He has no games of double-digit targets through 3 weeks. So the offense has changed, which I think that helps Matt Ryan as a quarterback. So I'm not burying him, but my expectations are
Devonta
lowered.
Freeman and Tevin Coleman. Last week, your starts of the week, Mike. What in the world do you do against the Carolina Panthers with 2 running backs splitting carries?
I'll start Freeman. I've kind of buried Coleman in the rankings. Coleman can absolutely just end up with those touchdowns, as we saw. He got 3 gimmies last week. But I would, if I have to play one this week, I'd prefer to go with Freeman. I guess Coleman is an okay flex start if that's the way that you have to go. But I'm not looking at starting him with running back 2 confidence.
All right, Raiders, Ravens this week, and this, guys, is mine.
Andy's almost upset of the week.
That's right, the Raiders, the Ravens. Raiders are 3.5-point underdogs, and I think they take this one.
They are the favorites. Ravens are 3.5-point favorites.
Correct.
What did I say?
Underdogs.
I meant the Raiders. I thought I said the
No,
Raiders are 3.5-point
Yeah,
underdogs.
Then Raiders and Ravens. I misheard you. I apologize.
You should apologize to me. The Raiders, I think they take this one. I think they can get it from the Ravens.
Whoa. Do they take it or do they almost take it?
They get real close. I
Okay.
mean, they might take it by a point or 2.
All right.
I think when it's a small line like this, your almost upset is pretty much an upset.
Yeah. So you have we've talked about Latavius Murray and the limited workload that he's seen. He's been very successful with the touchdown in every game, but you've seen 9, 11, 14 carries. For me, you can't start anybody on the running back side for the Ravens because Forsett and West have been putrid.
Yes, I agree.
So do you start Murray as a 2, as a 1? What do you think about Murray moving forward?
Well, I would prefer to start him as a 2, but I understand that people kind of – you may have drafted Latavius as your 1, but the snap percentages are just going down where Latavius isn't even playing over 50% of the snaps. He's in a full committee with 2 other running backs where it's not just the 1-to-1. So now he has to worry about 2 guys kind of sharing some time, which stinks. But, I mean, overall, the Raiders, all of them are getting it done. They're averaging – the Raiders running backs together averaging 5.9 yards per carry, which is that's ridiculous. That's ridiculous. I don't know if they can get it done so much against the Ravens. Excuse me.
Doing all right there?
I got the Jason throat going on.
It's ironic because you guys say you can't start any of the Ravens running backs. In my rankings, I actually have Latavius Murray and Justin Forsett back to back, and in one of my leagues, it's a slightly deeper league, but I am playing Justin Forsett this week. I think this is a winnable matchup. You've got Kenneth Dixon kind of breathing down your shoulder, but he's not going to be there yet. In a pinch, which I am in, I think that you could have enough value here.
I don't think anybody's describing Latavius Murray as an in a pinch play, though, for them to be rated so close.
No, I think
together.
Forsett.
No, I know, but he said they're back-to-back in his rankings.
Yes, well, I've got both of them right now, 23 and 24 in my rankings. So a very low-end running back 2.
What do you do with Cooper or Crabtree?
Crabtree's an auto start for me.
So far this season, he's outperforming Cooper fantasy-wise. Last year he did it. Cooper is the sexier pick, the flashier pick, but doesn't production just need to rule at this point?
Yeah, I mean, look, Crabtree is a good wide receiver. He was drafted, 10th overall in the NFL draft years ago. He has been productive once he got back from that injury that took him out for a couple years. You saw it last year, and you've seen it this year. His targets and his consistency make him, what Mike says, a weekly start, because it doesn't matter if it's I'm not talking like the Broncos, but if it's a generic bad matchup, it's just not really a good matchup, or maybe they've got a good DB, well, that guy's going to go on Amari Cooper. Those wide receivers, he is the wide receiver 1 for his team, but he's seen as the wide receiver 2 by opposing teams, which is kind of the best thing for a consistent guy. I don't think you're going to get the huge blow-up potential that you ever have in Amari Cooper, but if you need, in your wide receiver 2 or your flex, I've been so far in our league of record, I've played Michael Crabtree every single week, and I have not regretted it once.
I have Steve Smith Sr. rated ahead of Crabtree this week in my wide receiver rankings.
I believe I do too.
I'm going to get into that in a later segment. Right now, the Ravens are the 8th best run defense, the 3rd best pass defense. The Raiders are on the opposite end of that spectrum. I think it's going to be a close game. I think the Raiders are going to take it. That's what I think. I think the Ravens have had a pretty good schedule so far. Do you play Flacco or Carr in this game? That's my last question for you.
Yeah, I would play them both. I think that if you're rolling with Carr, he's good. Flacco is a good streaming pick. I believe it's Jason's stream of the week.
He is.
I would a step back real quick. Let's talk Amari Cooper. What are you doing with Amari Cooper? I mean, the targets are there. The production has not been what you have hoped for a guy. I think it was a 3rd, maybe a 4th-round draft pick. Are you trying to sell Cooper? Are you trying to acquire him? Or are you just going to hold him?
I think he's a hold right now. He's dropped a couple of touchdown passes where if those weren't dropped, you'd go, oh, he's great. And so maybe a trade for if you can get him cheap. He still carries so much name value, though. I think for the most part, you're just holding him. He's a fine start. I have no problem starting him.
All right, the Titans go to Houston to take on the Texans, who are 5-point favorites, low over-under of 40 points. The Texans' defense has allowed just 15.7 receptions per game, which is 1st in the league. And then you get that's your auto don't start Marcus Mariota alert.
Yeah.
Now, they lost J.J. Watt, but they're still going to be a good defense at home against the Tennessee offense where it looks like your job is to stop DeMarco Murray.
Yeah, and that's if I'm starting anyone from the Titans, I'll start DeMarco Murray. I'm okay playing Delanie Walker, assuming that he suits up, and all the news has to be pretty positive for me. I don't want a guy who missed last week to be hobbled through the entire week, and Friday, he gets a limited practice. I'm not going to have confidence starting him on the road against the Texans.
Yeah, and as far as starting DeMarco Murray, the Texans are going to try to stop him every play, and they might bottle him up in the running game. He might not, like last week, go for 114 yards on the ground. However, his reception totals are
great,
are league-leading type of numbers. He had 5 receptions week 1, 7 week 2, and 5 week 3. I mean, he's averaging, almost 6 receptions a game.
I got it. Pop quiz, hot shot. Who has more targets, DeMarco Murray or Theo Riddick?
Ooh.
Well, I mean, pop quiz tells me you're leaning. I mean, it's got to be Murray.
Jason?
Well, yeah, because of the nature of how you brought it up, I'm going to go Murray. That would be a little surprise.
It was a trick question. They both have 19.
Okay.
But
right.
that's
great.
That's
great.
3rd among running backs.
The Titans are the 17th against the run thus far this season. They are 12th against the pass. Do you start Hopkins and Fuller at home against them?
Yep.
Fuller is fine as a flex?
Yep.
All right, and then the Tajay Sharp bubble might have burst already. He was limited in practice this week. Production hasn't been there. And now Kendall Wright returns, probably Delanie Walker returning. I don't think you can start Sharp with any sort of confidence. Delanie Walker I'd be rolling out there, but that's the only passing option in that offense I'd roll out.
Yeah, I agree.
All right, the Bills and Patriots. Right now there is not an over-under because we're waiting to hear about the quarterback situation in New England. Do you believe it's going to be Garoppolo or Brissett?
I believe it's going to be Brissett.
Yeah, that's where I am. What's funny about this is the wise guys in Vegas have said we don't have an over-under, but the Patriots are favored by almost 6 points. We don't care who the quarterback is
Or how much
they're favored.
That's the actual default state for the Patriots when they go to they clear out the boards every week for lines. Everybody gets a 0, but the Patriots get 5.5 points.
They just leave it there.
Yeah, you need 5.5 against the Patriots just to start. That's actually what the Bills will start on the board with. They give the Bills 5.5 points to start the game.
A ceremonial 5.5 points.
Yeah, and Rex is like, yeah, I'll take them. Tyrod Taylor, this season it's been
Nope.
It's been one great game because of deep balls.
Because of 2 broken plays.
It's been one great game because of 80-something yards rushing and a touchdown. So the unpredictable Tyrod Taylor, can he put up numbers in this game? It's in Buffalo. Or no, I'm sorry, it's in New England.
Yeah.
I'm not starting to.
He can put up numbers in the same way that we saw. He had a game last year against New England where he was atrocious, just the worst, and they were getting killed. And then because of that, I think he came back and put up 3 touchdowns. But the reason why I don't expect even the ability for that to happen is because the game script, I think Jacoby Brissett is going to be the quarterback. And if he's the quarterback, this is a low-scoring game. This is going to be a game where they're running the ball, and the only guy is maybe the only guy that I'm starting, period, is LeGarrette Blount. I'd probably still throw Gronk in there, but he is, I mean, there are other options I will like better than Gronk this week. And so, I think it's going to be a very low-scoring, ugly game. I don't think LaShawn McCoy, despite his great season so far and the fact that he was able to go up against a very good Arizona Cardinals run defense and run nonstop, the Cardinals did not scheme specifically for that. I cannot imagine that Bill Belichick's going to come in here and not scheme. I mean, with Sammy Watkins, who missed practice again today in its entirety, if he's gone, who's getting the ball. And if you think that Bill Belichick is not going to come prepared for that, that's crazy. So I do not like LaShawn McCoy in this game. I don't like almost any of the pieces. I'm not playing. I want LeGarrette Blount and maybe Gronk. That's about it.
Okay. Any other narrative storylines from this game you want to bring up before we move on?
No, I think I liked how Jason broke it down. It's good.
All right, the Seahawks and the Jets in New York. The Jets are underdogs by 2.5 points. This is a 41-point over-under. I don't think I said it in the news, but Russell Wilson practiced in full. They expect him to be on the field. He's one of the tougher guys. He's never missed a game. This is the week that people thought maybe he misses a game. MCL sprain. Looks like he'll be out there. You have Wilson. You obviously have the woke one, Christian Michael, in this game. Going to have the backfield to himself again, but a very difficult third-ranked Jets run defense.
Yeah.
So what is the real ceiling for Michael? Is this something where you're not going to be happy with your fantasy production if he doesn't find his way into the end zone on a goal line carry or something like that?
Yeah, that's where I was going. I expect the rushing total. It's not going to be the over 100 again for what I'm expecting. Maybe 60 to 70 yards. The question for Wilson, he's going to play tough guy, but how effective can he be? He has a bum ankle. Now he has a bum knee. I mean, there's concerns for me. If I have a different option, and which you almost always do because the waiver wire.
Kirk Cousins, for example.
If Kirk Cousins is available on your waiver wire, he might not be, or maybe he's your backup. I'm playing Kirk Cousins over Russell Wilson this week.
Yeah,
people were asking why we didn't make Kirk Cousins one of our streams of the week, and I want to explain that because Kirk Cousins is owned in 65% of leagues, and so we try to aim a little bit lower in our streams of the week so that they're more available in your leagues. But if he was available,
then yes,
he needs to be one of your top streams at home against Cleveland.
Yeah, completely agree. Russell Wilson, you saw last week, normally he's averaging 20, he gets 20 yards on the ground, and last week with that bum ankle, he got 3 yards. He's clearly not mobile yet. And so I'm in agreement that if there's a better option, I am going to start that option over a hurt Russell Wilson against a solid Jets defense. The question that I really have is what to do with Doug Baldwin.
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, Doug Baldwin.
If Russell's out there, Baldwin will be just fine.
Yeah, and it's a tough matchup, but Doug Baldwin's just been so reliable.
Not nearly as tough as it is for the wide receivers on the other side of the equation. Thus far through the season, points given up to fantasy wide receivers, 14 points less is what you receive when you play the Seahawks. They're the number one ranked in the league. Miami wide receivers put up 13 total against them. LA wide receivers put up 22 total. 49er wide receivers put up 11. None of those wide receiver cores have a Brandon Marshall in the equation, but you're missing Decker. I don't think I'm not starting Enunwa. I'm finding a different option, even though Enunwa will have the opportunity here. The only question is, I guess you just don't sit Brandon Marshall, right?
No, I play Brandon Marshall. If it looks like you have one of these games where he's just going to be force-fed. And
Sure.
Just real quick, back to Christian Michael, an interesting kind of dynamic here. So the woke one Hey, he's gained 10 or more yards on 8 of his 45 carries. I mean, that ranks him very highly in the league. Now, the Jets defense, while they are ranked 3rd against the run, they've allowed 10 or more yards on a carry on 10 of 64 carries. So people are getting these chunks against them. So
which is dead last in the league almost.
So maybe there's a little bit of light.
They're
for a
subject
breakaway
to
touchdown.
peeking
big play.
through
Yeah.
for the woke one, and maybe it can get it done. Let's move to Jimmy Graham. What do you do with Jimmy Graham? Is he back? Are you fully on board with Jimmy Graham?
Well, I don't think anybody should be fully on board with a player recovering from that type of injury after one good game and the first really good game in over a year. But am I inching my way towards being really wanting to take – look, there's so many barfy tight ends, as you would say. Why not take a chance on Jimmy Graham? Doesn't mean I have 100% confidence in him, but why not take a chance?
Sure.
So we need to move on now. It's time for my favorite segment of the week.
Starts of the week.
Starts of the week. We're giving you the guys we have supreme confidence in this week, guys that you should put in your lineup. I think I'm going to kick it over to Jason, let him start off with the quarterback of his choice. Who's your start of the week at the quarterback position?
My start of the week this week at quarterback is Matthew Stafford. Look, a lot of people that drafted Stafford, they have him paired with another quarterback, and I am saying you have to stay in these flames. You look, there's no chance that at the end of the year the Detroit Lions have anywhere. I'm saying that they will be bottom 5 in the league on percentage of scores through the ground. Through the ground.
What in the world? I have no clue where you're going.
What is happening? I'm saying that just like last year's Jaguars, right? They were, I think, the last place team in the league of their percentage of touchdowns that came through the running backs versus through wide receivers and tight ends. And so this year, I think that that's the Detroit Lions. And we saw what happened for Bortles last year. This is a high-scoring game that they're not going to be able to punch them in on the ground. So I expect most of the touchdowns to be going from Matthew Stafford. And we've seen the offense is rolling. I'm not benching Matthew Stafford. If I've got Matthew Stafford or Aaron Rodgers, I'm playing Stafford.
You might just have wanted to say, I'm going with Stafford this week.
Yeah.
Sure.
Well, so you're telling me is Detroit will not be signing any moles or hedgehogs or gophers
to go directly through the ground.
Yeah. They will not be burrowing into the end zone.
No, actually, yeah, I think they don't give up anything to those type of burrowing. All right, Mike, quarterback.
I'm going Blake Bortles. Indianapolis is allowing 312 yards per game through the air, not burrowing through the ground. I think it might be nasty. You might be going through a first half going, why didn't I start Blake Bortles? And then the garbage man will come through with his stinky poo trash, and you'll love the fantasy points that he gives you.
It's terrifying descriptions of why you should start these guys so far.
Hey, it happens.
Here's mine. I'm going Kirk Cousins. You've got Cleveland at home. Right now he's averaging 334 yards a game despite the quote-unquote struggles for Kirk Cousins, which is second in the league. He's at home, beatable opponent. No turnovers last game. Each game thus far this season, he's increased his fantasy points. I think it continues again. You're going to see him over 30 points at home against Cleveland.
My man.
I'm going to go ahead and move on to the running back. I'm going to give you Carlos Hyde against Dallas. If you play on ESPN, you've become accustomed to seeing those opponent rating. You got the green.
Green means go.
Green means go. You got the red. Dallas shows up red because Dallas has been deceptively good against the run. They show up as 10th best against the run in the league. But here's the caveat. They've given up the most yards per carry of any team in the league against the running back. They've played nobody that has any, no top-end running backs have gone up against Dallas thus far. You've seen, like, the Washington running backs. I think Carlos Hyde, he had a game last week against Seattle. He was over 100 yards on 21 carries. I think Hyde is the only show in town for San Francisco. You're going to see the workload. I'm very regretful of trading him and getting back a broken Dez Bryant right now because Carlos Hyde's going to have a good week.
I love all the Carlos Hyde that has been pouring in over the last few weeks.
More or less than my C.J. Anderson love right now.
Which one do I like more?
Yeah.
Probably the Hyde. Probably the Hyde love. It feels good. Feels good, man. I'm going with Isaiah Crowell. He's playing against Washington. This is what Washington has allowed on the ground: 149, 96, and 120. And in each of those games, running backs have burrowed in 2 touchdowns in every single game. So I'm going with the Crow. I think that Cleveland can put up a fight against Washington's defense enough so that Crowell will get the work. We've seen him. He's been the man for Cleveland. And Hugh Jackmanson likes Crow. So I do too. I'm going with him this week.
Speaking of Crowell and, the Browns right now, they are like the Bengals light, right? They've taken a bunch of the Bengals style. They took Hugh Jackmanson, and so they're trying to emulate that. And last week you did see against the Dolphins 148 yards on the ground, and that is why my start of the week is a scary one. I'm going with Jeremy Hill. I think Jeremy Hill is going to be just fine this week because he is playing those Miami Dolphins, and he's doing it at home in a game that the Cincinnati Bengals are favored by 7 points. The Dolphins have given up 96 yards, 149 yards, and 148 yards in the first 3 weeks. They seem like they're okay, kind of like what Andy was saying, because they've only given up 1 touchdown on the ground. But if there's a specialty of Jeremy Hill, it's punching in touchdowns. And so in games, since Jeremy Hill's been in the league where the Bengals are favored by more than 7 or more points, like this game, he averages 13.48 points in standard leagues. And that's really good. He goes from 56 yards per game to 73 yards per game. So I think this is a winnable matchup. I think the game script was kind of given by Cleveland for what to do against the Dolphins. And, Jeremy Hill looked pretty good last week, so I'm going to throw him out there.
All right, my wide receiver start of the week is Steve Smith Sr. Look, he has Oakland, which is already a great reason to play. A great reason to play.
We've all got it today.
A wide receiver. Oakland's dead last against opposing wide receivers in fantasy football through 3 weeks. But look, his yardage has increased each of the last 3 weeks. He's getting acclimated. Coming off of the injury, we know that Joe loves him. Joe Flacco loves him. He already leads the team, right, in yards, catches, and targets through 3 games. Coming back from the injury, the touchdowns are coming. This is a game of averages. He hasn't scored in 3 games, which is why you haven't been hearing as much publicity about Steve Smith. Rest of the season, I'd take Steve Smith over Mike Wallace. That's just me. I don't think Wallace is going to be bad, but it's Steve Smith Sr. this week against Oakland. I think you can roll him out there as a flex or even a wide receiver 2 if you need him. If you have a Packer, right, this week on bye, or a Jordan Matthews on bye, go throw Steve Smith in there in your wide receiver 2 and feel confident.
All right, I'm going a little bit on a ledge here. Maybe I'm going on the pirate ship. I'm walking the plank. But did you know, did the Foot Clan know this? Brian Hoyer was the quarterback 11 last week.
He was pretty darn good.
Did you know that?
I did.
Brian Hoyer, who was very good for fantasy purposes last year with the Texans and DeAndre Hopkins. I am going to flex Kevin White. Last week, 14 targets. They're playing against Detroit. I think there's going to be a lot of points going up on the board. And Chicago, they are 3-point dogs at home. So they're not even favored to win in their own building. The wise guys are saying they're going to have to score just to keep up with Detroit. And I think that Kevin White has a connection with Brian Hoyer. And I think this is kind of the game where we see Kevin White emerge and he becomes hot topic off of the waiver wire.
I want to put you on the spot here. Kevin White as your start of the week or Will Fuller at home against the
I'd probably
Titans.
go Will Fuller there.
Okay, asking for a friend.
Are you actually making that decision?
Yeah.
All right, so for me, I'm going back to the well of Travis Benjamin. Last week, I was down on Benjamin. I said that I didn't really want to start him. I liked Terrell Williams better because of the matchup. I thought that Benjamin could get a little bit shut down, and if you were a Benjamin owner, you were scared all game long as he was sitting at 19 yards for the whole game until the very end of the game. But this week, going up against the New Orleans Saints, Travis Benjamin has a great matchup. He's the number 1 target. He's led them in receptions. He's led them in yards. He is a very confident start, and he's another one of those guys where when you drafted him, you probably have other options, and you're saying, who do I start? Do I go with these middle tier guys, or do one of which is Travis Benjamin? I'm saying throw Travis Benjamin in there. if he had a huge blow-up monstrous game, none of us are going to be surprised.
Sure.
Okay, I'm going to give you my tight end start of the week. It's Coby Fleener.
Ooh.
Reverse Samson!
I believe he's woke. I believe that Drew Brees is on pace for 9,000 yards. I believe that San Diego can cover the wide receiver better than the tight end. And I believe that Coby Fleener showed us last week that him and Drew Brees are getting on the same page. We said it was a tough process for Ben Watson and Drew Brees last year. We see Coby Fleener in a high-volume passing offense. Who knows if Snead's back out there, but even if he is, I like Coby Fleener this week.
Sure. And I'm going with D2HP. That's Dennis Pitta when he's got two hips. He's taking on Oakland. You want logic of why do you play Dennis Pitta against Oakland? Because it's Oakland, and they stink against the tight end, and they stink against all sorts of passing weapons. And Joe Flacco, much like he loves Steve Smith, Senor, he loves Dennis Pitta. Pitta's getting targets out the wazoo, and I want in on that action.
Yeah, I don't blame you there. My start of the week this week at tight end
It was almost mine.
He is a guy
I love it.
right now, as you're listening, after waivers have already cleared, he is still available in half of your leagues. So you might want to think about grabbing him and starting him if you don't have a good option, and that is Zach Miller. Yeah, Brian Hoyer, as you were talking about with your Kevin White, he was good last week. He has not been a bad quarterback for fantasy football purposes. He's really been a pretty okay option, and so this week he's my number 8 quarterback, and what we see is his matchup this week against the tight end. This is what Detroit has given up against the tight end.
3 games?
In 3 games. They have given up 88 yards, 91 yards, and 37. 3 touchdowns, 1 and 1. That's in 3 games, 5 touchdowns. Last week we saw Zach Miller grab 2 touchdowns. We saw him over 80 yards. I think he's a safe option with a high upside.
Zach Miller or Kyle Rudolph this week?
Zach Miller.
All right. There you have it. All of these starts that we've gone through will be on the website, thefantasyfootballers.com, so make sure you visit. You can take note of those guys, share your thoughts on the website as well. As we close out the show today, I again want to thank 5-4 Club for sponsoring us today. If you want to stand out from the crowd and not blend in like everybody else, you can check out 54club.com. Use the promo code BALLERS when you sign up, and you get 2 packages for your first order. That's $60 worth, $60 for $240 worth of clothing. That is the promo code BALLERS for $240 worth of clothing. That's a good deal.
Love it.
I like things that, $240, 60
I like deals.
I mean, that's sweet. That is a hot deal. You guys have any parting thoughts, parting words?
No, I'm looking forward to the jointhefoot.com exclusive show. And, of course, fantasyjocks.com for all your trophies and championship belts
Sweet.
and winner needs. I know you need them.
Show after the show coming on YouTube right now.
Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Fantasy Footballers Podcast. Join our fantasy football community on jointhefoot.com and follow us on Twitter @TheFFBallers.